Hi, this is Levi Sim for the Photofocus webinar. We are here today to talk about underwater portraiture with the marvelous Erika Thornes, who I'll introduce in just a second here. And we hang out twice a month. We have a Lightroom hangout the first Monday of each month, and then also this Perfectly Clear hangout. And we've got a new series coming up on storage and backup that I think you're really going to be interested in. It's going to help you be a safer and wiser photographer by creating safe backup strategies for your files and images. But today we're talking about underwater portraiture with one of the highly experienced people in the field of underwater portraiture, and that's Erika Thornes. Welcome to the show, Erika.
Hi, Levi. I'm really excited to be here. It's one of my favorite topics because it's so much fun. It's a little bit different, and the way I do it, I think that everybody can follow and can participate themselves and dive in and enjoy. So I hope that I inspire some of our viewers to give it a shot. It's fun.
Absolutely. And, you know, most people, when we shop for houses, we're looking at things like number of bathrooms or how big is the kitchen, you know, does the house entertain the way that I want? You know, am I going to be able to host my family when they come for a visit? You go straight to the backyard when you're looking at houses and shop for pools.
Yeah, it was funny. My husband, we broke in through the backyard to come check out our brand new house. And we walked in, my husband saw the backyard. He didn't even enter the house. And he goes, "Oh, we can get this one." And it just happened to be that the pool was phenomenal for what I'm doing. So it was very fortuitous that we were able to buy when we did. And the last 9 months have been a blast, being able to create a lot more since I have easy access right out my back door to gorgeous underwater portrait studio.
Excellent. Well, we'll talk about some of those characteristics you're looking for in an underwater studio and more. First of all, we're glad that Perfectly Clear is helping us make this podcast, this webinar happen. And Perfectly Clear creates wonderful tools for helping us finish our pictures. And with Perfectly Clear and Perfect Eyes and Perfect Skin, I can finish my pictures better and faster than I can do it on my own in Lightroom and Photoshop. It does things that I am not skilled at doing and things that I cannot possibly do on my own. And we'll show you a little bit about how some of those tools work today as well. But we'd also like to give away a couple copies of Perfect Eyes and also a full Perfectly Clear license code as well today. And we'd like you to enter the drawing for those. And to enter the drawing for our giveaways today, you need to leave us a question or a comment in the Q&A panel. And to do that, let me share my screen and show you how that works. You probably see something like this on your screen right now. And if you press the play button, and make this full screen, if you press the play button in the Hangout page, then it takes you to this window where you see Erika and I in video. If you'll click right up here in this little grid, then you get the Q&A and showcase options. Click on Q&A, and then you can leave a question right here in this panel, and I will help manage those while Erika instructs us in underwater portraiture today. And when you leave a question or a comment, you can just say hello. That enters you in the drawing for a complimentary copy of Perfectly Clear and Perfect Eyes. So come on in and ask a question to enter our drawing and things. And with that, Erika, what do we need to do to make underwater portraits?
Well, let's have fun here. And seriously, I would love it if people ask questions, because I think that's the way that we can serve you guys best, is by answering the questions as they come along. So please feel free to ask questions, and hopefully the flow of this will really be fun. So let me start by sharing my screen and showing you some of my work. And I hope Levi will have a few questions to start out.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here we go. This is me in the pool with one of my first underwater models. Her name is Allie, and she's a cousin of mine. And the reason I wanted to show you this was to show you that I don't use a lot of fancy gear. I always recommend shooting with a raw files, or instead of shooting JPEG. So that is the data that comes directly off of your camera. Some cameras can do that, and it lets you edit further and push your colors further later. But so any kind of camera that can shoot RAW is an ideal camera for shooting underwater.
So are you shooting with like a 5D Mark III and an underwater housing?
Well,
what are you doing?
Currently I'm shooting with both a Sony a6000 in an underwater hard case, as well as the Canon 6D in an underwater bag, the EWA Marine bag and the Canon 6D.
Right, you're not diving with this thing. You're not going
No.
30 feet underwater. You don't need the
I don't need the super expensive things. I like to keep my cases under $300.
Absolutely. Not $3,000.
Exactly. So that way I can switch up whatever camera body I put in there. I can try new lenses. I can try new things without having to buy expensive ports. And since I'm not a surf photographer, I sometimes do go in the surf, but since I'm not out there hardcore, I don't need the strength and durability for a camera that can go down 100 feet. I just stay 2 to 3 feet under, and as long as you are smart and don't take those cases, those soft the soft cases in the hot tub, they won't leak, or they haven't leaked. So
is the hot tub extra corrosive, or is it just...
the heat will make the glues soften a little, and that was the only time I've had a very slow, mild leak, and my camera was saved, everything was fine. And so now I put very absorbent feminine products in the bottom.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that seem to stop the that you catch the water before it hits the bottom of the camera, because it will fill up from the bottom up. So you still have that gap at the bottom, and your lens will fog up. So you have warnings. So it's not the dire emergency, and it's not the dire fear that a lot of people have. You can give it a try. A lot of people are intimidated to put their camera in a bag. You can put a can of beans or a can of warm soda in the bag first and try it out and make sure that it doesn't leak before you put your expensive camera in.
A can of beans or a can of warm soda?
Yes, so that way you can check to make sure your bag is completely tight.
Oh, you mean just to dip it underwater and have
just
some
to make
weight
sure.
in there?
Yeah, make sure you have some weight in there, and just to make sure that you aren't having any leaks or holes. And I mean, they're really great. So I really haven't had a problem. I'm happy doing that.
And tell us again which brand of bag you're using?
I use the EWA Marine bag. They've been real good to me, and all bags are difficult to use, but I find that they have a lot of different variety of sizes, and the lens ports are clear. I don't get a lot of flare. They're good. I'm happy with it. So
excellent.
Yeah, so I'm going to go through and show you some of my older images, so that you can kind of see what we're talking about for underwater portraiture. So this is one I did quite a few years ago, and I applied a texture to it because the pool wasn't very interesting and pretty. So it's kind of a fun fantasy type looking image. Here is what it looked like more right out of camera. So you can see how much of the post-processing, this is a separate frame, of that same series. You can see how much the post-processing can make a difference and make it feel a little bit more beyond the standard, which is fun.
Yeah, I like what you're doing with color there too. That's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And then I wanted to show you, here's the before and after also of using a model. This was actually shot in JPEG. So you can shoot JPEG underwater. So here's before the edits, and here is after. So I've added, so I've just added a little bit more depth to the image and a little bit of softness, just to bring the focus back to the model instead of to the bar of the pool behind her.
Well, and with Photoshop's new content-aware cropping, you could just expand that and get extra area at the bottom with no selections or any hard work.
I would love to play with it. I haven't had a chance to play with that tool yet, and it's really on my radar. So that's what I'm going to be focusing my learning on that in the next few weeks.
Excellent.
So, and here's another one from that same shoot with the before and after. And here is a lot of people, when they're shooting underwater, they will get an image like this, and the color is just off, and they get frustrated. They kind of give up. You don't need to give up when you get to this stage. With Lightroom and Photoshop, you can take an image that is like this, straight out of camera, and create something that looks like that.
I love it.
Yeah, so don't give up. With underwater photography, almost 70% of the battle is done on the computer afterwards. So
right on.
Yeah, so keep that in mind. So I heard that you are going on an adventure to the coast soon.
Yes, we're going next week. We're going to spend all week at the coast next week. So
awesome.
wow, look at this.
Yeah, so this was our vacation. So I don't get to go out into, living in San Diego. San Diego is a desert. So I can either go to the beach, which our water clarity here in San Diego isn't that great. Up in Orange County, it's a lot clearer. I don't understand. Maybe the housing prices up there are higher, so they get clearer water. So unfortunately, when I shoot at the beach here in San Diego, the water's so murky that I'm forced to wait until I go on vacation like this up to Mount Shasta. And then we can take pictures underwater there. So yeah, I hope to see pictures like this from you in a few weeks.
We'll see. We'll see how the clarity is on the days I go out too. But yeah. It'll be. I'm excited.
Yeah. So yeah, let me show you real quick since we're talking about.
And I'm using one of those tough cameras, just an underwater point and shoot.
Perfect. Okay, so when you're using those underwater point and shoots, be sure to set them for the underwater. Mm-hmm. And when I use an underwater point and shoot, I try and keep my camera set to probably a stop overexposed, because it just works better. And then also try and shoot rapid fire, and then really crank your color as far as you can towards the golden yellows, because it'll make your life a lot easier when you come home.
Excellent. Thanks. So like a warmer white balance.
As far warm as you can get it if you're shooting.
And more neutral, I suppose, a more neutral colors, like contrast choice.
Yeah, yep, all of that. But then a little bit overexposed and really as warm as you can get it. See, this is the clarity of the water in San Diego is pretty miserable. So when I go to the beach, I end up shooting much more with that same bag or the same case above water like these. Right on. So yeah, so that's kind of fun. So anyway, yeah, so I wanted to kind of go over, if no one else has some questions, about what I learned when I was first shooting underwater and how light affects the images.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So what I find when I see a lot of hobbyists underwater photos is that they aren't looking at where their light is coming from. Just it seems like when you're shooting above water, it's pretty easy to say, oh yeah, we need to find open shade. Oh yeah, we're looking at the direction of the sun makes a big difference. People say, oh yeah, we'll shoot backlit. All of those things that photographers have had drilled into them, when they get in the pool or they get in the water, they seem to like disappear. Like people are like, huh? And even for me, they totally disappeared. And this image here kind of gives you an example of what a difference light makes. This was actually shot at Photoshop World last summer. And it was at the Mandalay Bay.
Right after my session.
Exactly. Exactly. And so this was shot at the Mandalay Bay, and we only had, it was like at 9 a.m. And the only way that we could get this image was, unfortunately, with this time of day and with the light at this angle. So the pool is one of those giant wave pools. It goes straight out, so you can't see the end of it. So it looks almost like the ocean, but I couldn't move my model around to deal with the light rays. And so they're hitting her body, and it's all right. It's stripy. I mean, it's beautiful, but I just kind of got stuck. But if you see at the other image, I chose the time of day to be right at dusk. So the sun had set over the pool. There was still a lot of ambient light in the room, in the atmosphere. And so it created a nice light softbox on her instead of the harsh directional light. So when you are shooting underwater, you still have to take and keep in mind the time of day and the direction of the light. So yeah. And I think it's fun because when you do that, you can, like this picture here, just a fun little one that I handed off to a kid. As you can see with this, the direction of the light creates spark, striping on her faces and everything. Even when I hand a camera off to a child and they're shooting it from the right angle, they can get really fun underwater photos. Excellent. Even kids can do. Yeah, like even this one's excellent. It's because it's backlit.
I love it. Okay.
So when you are shooting underwater, the light changes so much and creates so many stripes that shooting backlit is something that's really, really helped with underwater.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
And Mark Rodriguez is asking you to show the shot of Ron, which I think I know what it must be.
Fine, fine, fine. Ron, are you going to kill me if I show this? Okay, I apologize, but I think that
You should take yourself seriously as an underwater photographer. Is that right?
absolutely 100% seriously. Let's see if I can find that one. I don't know, Ron. Okay, let's see. Ron might be safe. Oh, nope, you're not safe. Since we are talking about backlight.
Right. Look at the difference it makes. He gets,
Look at
he
the
gets a little
difference it
glow
makes.
of stripes.
Exactly. So the stripes are on his arms, but they aren't on his face. And
Right.
so shooting this at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the light was still going, we were able to create a beautiful and airy portrait with the light flowing through the water, but yet still his face isn't striped. So keep in mind angles, and keep in mind, you know, hotel sheets make absolutely beautiful gowns if you don't have access to something else.
Excellent.
I'm sorry, Ron.
They say don't take your room towels down to the pool, but they didn't say anything about the sheets.
Absolutely nothing about the sheets. So, yep, see, backlit, even with a little point and shoot camera, you can get
Awesome.
fun pictures. So,
Okay.
yeah. So, let me show you, let me see if there's anything else really interesting. When I was
saw
first,
some behind the scenes in there too that we'll have to see eventually.
Yep. See, not all of my photos are good.
Okay.
When I was first starting, these are the mistakes I was making with light. You got to try before you actually get successful at things. It's okay to keep trying. So, yeah.
Excellent.
And, yeah.
Well, so how can we modify light? How can we control what's going on under the water?
A lot of people like to use strobes when they're shooting in the pool. And that can be an expensive solution.
That looks like an expensive solution all over.
Yeah.
You're not wearing air.
Oh, no. That's a good friend of mine, and he's an awesome guy, and he let us use our pool, his pool. All of my lighter images are done in his pool. Like these ones here are all done in his pool. He is very kind and gracious to lend his pool to us. But he likes to go, he's a diver, he's certified diving. He wears the weight belts, he has the underwater stuff for diving. Whereas I just carry that little bag. Right. And Brett had the most amazing, ingenious solution when we went over to his house. We were doing an underwater collective. I wouldn't call it a workshop because we were all learning and teaching each other, which is fantastic. And Brett had suggested using this whole reflector here.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a Home Depot reflector. It's just $10. It's 8 feet across by 4 feet wide. I mean, I could go buy an expensive one from B&H, but you know what? These are almost disposable. They fit in my minivan. I drag them home. You can cut them in half if you need to, if you don't have a minivan, or strap it to the top and make a kite as you're flying home. But they create incredible dimensional light. So let me show you what happens when you use one of those. When you use a reflector, here's not using a reflector. So let's start there.
Okay.
So this is not using a reflector. It's a beautiful image. She looks soft. It looks beautiful. And let me show you. Here is what happens when you use a reflector.
Oh, you can really be selective with your light.
And because your exposure is on your subject, and it is so bright using that reflector coming down, you're able to darken the background dramatically.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
Chiaroscuro, yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. And it just makes it so you can add a lot more dimension and depth to your portraits, as well as the color becomes so much more bold. So one of the pictures that people are loving that I've created lately is this, not this one. Let me show you the finished one. Is this image right here.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, lady in the red dress. And this was shot for a Google Plus scavenger hunt that Krista Ray does. And the theme was crimson. So I had to come up with an image that used crimson as its theme. And I had this red dress that I got at Salvation Army for $3. And I had this amazing underwater model. So I'm like, let's give this a shot. And so she hopped in the pool and she flipped upside down. And so here is
awesome.
The original pictures of her upside down. She's struggling, she's kind of moving, but you can see how the dress had all this really cool lighting on it.
Yeah.
We had this frame here that she did. And, you know, this is my pool. That's the bright giant light shining on her, which is that $10 reflector.
Yeah.
This is how it looks straight out of camera. So really, when your straight out of camera pictures look like this, you've nailed it. So it seems like you haven't. You're gonna freak out because if you're an above water, you know, shooter, you look at that and you're like, oh, what am I gonna do? But no, this is a nailed shot, which is a hard thing to adjust to, but you can do it. And so what I did was I went and I edited that shot to this just right here in Lightroom. So you can see how far you can actually take an image in Lightroom when you're shooting raw and you're shooting underwater.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't, it's fine for Crimson, but it didn't have the drama that I really, really wanted. So I took all of those extra images in parts, like, and if you zoom in here, you can see this little fabric rose. I call it the rose. So there's this rose fabric right here. And I brought it in, and here's that rose again. There's that rose again. There's that rose again.
Oh, man.
So you can't tell that it's the same rose put in there 3 or 4 times in the images. And it's just because I use puppet warp and other types of ways to take those same fabrics from multiple images and composite them together in Photoshop. And it just made for a much more flowing dress from grabbing dress pictures that had that same reflector light on them.
I love it.
Yeah, so it's fun. So, and then of course, you know, you do the final editing and remove the spot from the ceiling because it was a little distracting. But this was all done with with a nice camera, a decent camera, but just a $300 underwater bag that I put my camera in. And you can buy bags for less than $100. So the barrier to entry is more so finding a pool and finding someone willing to dive in than it is the cost of equipment.
Excellent.
So,
excellent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. How, when you shoot this upside down, are you shooting it upside down, or are you just holding your camera right side up?
I'm holding my camera. So I'm holding my camera right side up and the model is flipping. Now, not all models can flip like this. This model is incredibly talented and can, but you can take lovely portraits with people right side up. This one is not edited yet, but as you can see, you can still just
it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be gorgeous once this one's edited. I've done a few underwater family sessions, and those are my absolute favorite, to be able to capture the joy and love in this kind of surreal environment. It makes for some stunning art.
I love it.
So,
I love it.
Yeah. So I thought, yeah, and you don't have to, I was going to say, one other thing I was going to say is, I'm showing you all these beautiful women, but you don't have to do beautiful women shots underwater. You can do merman.
Yes, I love merman idea. That's really fun.
So, you know, it's like you can, it's fun. I mean, it just adds an element of joy and surprise to shoot underwater. So yeah, I love it.
Excellent.
Are there any other questions in the audience?
Not just now. I think we're all enthralled by your work right now. So
I'll go over one more, and then we'll kind of go into how I use Perfectly Clear to get the finishing touches on some of these underwater portraits.
Excellent. So
I wanted to share this one. I think this was similar to the cover image that we went over, and and I do have one other thing to talk about after that too. And this image, my kids were trying to recreate the Sistine Chapel. So they wanted to do, I think, was it God touching David? And
Adam's hand.
Adam, okay, Adam's hand, it was Adam, yep. And they were trying so hard to do it. And it's really challenging to get your children to be able to maneuver in the pool, but they were insistent. So it was amazingly fun to work with them and to take the image from here to here. And then I posted it online, and there was a nice photographer who said, you know what, I think it would look better upside down. And he was 100% right. And this has become my children's favorite portrait. We have it hanging on our wall, and they're so incredibly proud of it. So
good.
Yeah, it's fun, and it was pretty simple. This one doesn't have a lot of the heavy Photoshop. It was just simple adjustments in Lightroom, and for this one image, it was also in Mac Fun. So it was fun. Yeah.
Well, and that's something important, is if your subjects are engaging with you, if you can instead of telling them what to do, I think you're probably going to have a lot more fun with kids, especially if they engage and tell you what they want to do.
Yep. Yep. And I also, yes, I agree. And I also want to say, water clarity is a huge deal. So I want to show you the difference between a clear pool, which is this, like, look at like how clear his swim shorts are and things like that. I mean, that's super clear. After 3 days of party hardy in my pool, and we had a pool party, we had adult baptisms in my pool, we had all this stuff going on. My pool was really dirty, and I had invited a friend to come over and shoot pictures of her daughter in my pool, but I asked her to come earlier in the week, and she's like, oh, I can't make it. I can't make it till Sunday afternoon. And I'm like, well, I don't think my pool is going to be very clean at that point. So she ended up coming, and you can get some really cool light scatter, and and you can see all the light rays in the pool, but the clarity just isn't there. So if you're struggling with capturing images, a lot of it could be the clarity. You can take pictures like this, and you can try and make them work by making them the subject much smaller in the image and then extending the backdrop and background. So
yeah,
I was able to give her this image, which I was, like, it's just not up to snuff. And this woman really would like to have, one image. And like, I was able to create this, which she was absolutely thrilled with. And even though my water clarity wasn't good, I was still able to deliver something fun even with the conditions weren't ideal. So don't give up, but be really aware that that you really need to have, if you're trying to do underwater portraits, an incredibly clear pool.
And tell us, well, so do you find that sometimes, well, so in this story, you've got to deliver a great photograph, and you had challenging circumstances, but you made lemonade out of lemons and ended up with a great photograph. Do you often find that that's kind of the case, that something has gone not according to plan, and you've ended up developing a new way to do it, or a better way to do it anyway?
Well, not really. Thankfully, this wasn't a paid session. If it was a paid session, I just would have canceled, which I do often. Like, we'll talk about,
good.
Yeah, so for beach sessions, I tell people we have a 3-day window. So if I'm shooting on the beach and they want to have those silhouette shots where the beach is reflective sand and you've got the sky and the sand, I'll look at the tides and watch the tide charts and say, okay, here's our 3-day window. We'll plan for the first day, but if we can't make that first day, I'll cancel on you an hour or two before, and we'll push to the next. The same is pretty similar with my underwater photography. I say, okay, your session time is 5:30. The sun sets at 6:15. We're getting in the pool at 5:45. We're shooting from 5:45 to 6:20. That's how it works. And I've also upped my filter on my pump. I've made sure all the factors are controlled for, and we go for it. So I've learned through trial and error which times work, what settings work, and what the pool needs to look like. So I make sure that all of those checklists of disasters that could have happened don't happen when I'm shooting for a client.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
Yeah,
okay.
But when you're shooting and you're practicing and you're experimenting, you learn how important all of those different factors are that you need to control for.
Cool.
That makes sense?
Good. Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to share these images from an underwater portrait session, and why and how I use the Perfectly Clear software. So
perfect. Let me redo a station identification real quick, Erika.
Perfect.
You are watching the Photofocus and Perfectly Clear webinar right now, and we are with Erika Thornes, teaching us how to do underwater portraiture, and this is really fun. I'm just taking notes like a madman over here. And fortunately, this is recorded, so we can all watch this again later. And we'd like to thank Perfectly Clear, athentechimaging.com for Athentech. They make perfectly clear, perfect eyes, and perfect skin, and they help us to finish our pictures and make them look better than we can on our own, even using Photoshop and Lightroom. And there's also a free version called Perfect Exposure, and I'd encourage you to head over and download that. It's free forever, and it is the best exposure and contrast tool that you will find, as well as sharpening. The sharpening it does is really, well, it does a great job of sharpening. And today we'd like to give away a couple of versions of those things. We'd like to give away a full license of Perfectly Clear and 2 licenses for Perfect Eyes. So if you will just weigh in with your question or with a comment and leave us a question or comment, then we will enter you in the drawing for those. And the way to enter that drawing is simply by leaving us a comment in the Q&A section, which if you're on the Hangout page, just click the play button here, and then that'll bring you into the viewer window. And in the window, there's this little grid up here on the top right. Click that grid and then click Q&A, and you'll be able to leave us a question or comment right here. And that enters you in the drawing for Perfectly Clear or Perfect Eyes automatically. And Todd's got a question for us, Erika.
Wonderful.
He just asked you one more time, what camera bag are you using for your underwater protection?
I'm using 2 different things. The bag that I use is an EWA marine bag.
How do you spell that?
EWA and then marine, M-A-R-I-N-E.
Perfect.
And it is fantastic for around the pool and down at the beach. It is difficult to adjust all of your settings through that plastic bag, but it's basically a giant thick Ziploc bag. But the advantage of it is so dramatic because you can use your best your best DSLR safely in the pool, so you can get excellent images. Excellent.
And what camera mode are you shooting in? What shooting mode are you using when you're shooting underwater?
You know, I switch things around sometimes. Mm-hmm. I like to shoot in manual, or I like to shoot in shutter priority, because you don't want your shutter speed to drop too low. And so as long as you keep your shutter speed up at like 1/200th of a second, I like to keep my depth of field a little bit wider than wide open. So I like to shoot at about 5.6. I don't always get that depending on when the light is. So then I let my ISO be more variable. So that way I can use exposure compensation. So I'll let my ISO be adjustable, and then I'll sometimes fix the other 2 depending on what my needs are.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay.
So, yep, because shooting automatic, you underwater, you're going to get some trouble. So you want to make sure. Yeah. And so I like to shoot, as we talked about for steps for you for your point and shoot. I like to overexpose by about half a stop. Now it really just depends on how far you are. Oh, that's something we should also talk about, how far you are away from your subject. Water clarity, we've been talking about, is absolutely huge. You want to shoot as wide as possible. You want to use as wide a lens as you have and get as close to your subject without distortion, because you're going to get a lot less clarity the further away you are from your subject.
Excellent. So what kind of a lens are you using on your 6D when you're shooting down there?
I've tried the 35 1.4, and I actually prefer using my 17 to 40, and then I shoot at about 17 to 19 millimeters. So I've tried both, and I really prefer it's a fixed f4, but for me, for underwater, I don't want to. Some people really like to shoot with the narrow depth of field, but for me, I like to get those bubbles crisp. So I like to shoot with a little bit deeper, a little bit smaller f-stop, which means that I will have a larger range of the depth underwater in focus, which is also good because the cameras sometimes can struggle to focus underwater. So if you are running into that trouble, what I do is I have the subject dive in at a certain depth, and I'll switch my lens and I'll focus on them with a wider, like at f6 or f5.6 or f8 or somewhere around there, and I'll fix it to a manual focus, so that way when they keep diving in and swimming back and forth in the same spot, my camera isn't being delayed by trying to capture and grab focus. So awesome. Yeah, so cameras can struggle underwater, and so you have to kind of take these things into account, and you learn the hard way. I'm like, I can't grab the focus. I missed the shot. And that's when you realize that, maybe I should shoot my lens in manual focus, not just, shooting in manual for the camera body.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Okay, yeah. So now you've made some pictures. What do we do? How do we make them
Okay.
look? How do we make them look good?
How do we make them look good? All right. So
How
I'm
do we
going
make
to.
them presentable?
Okay, so let me show you. Okay, so these images were given to a client for she did an underwater family session, which was absolutely fun and adorable.
How does eating watermelon underwater affect water clarity?
It was fine. We did it towards the end, and they came back up with the watermelon in their mouth and either chewed it or spit it out. And we kind of laughed about it. But there weren't too many watermelon pieces. Well, a bigger issue with clarity has more to do with soaps and swimsuits and conditioner and hair. So
do you ask people not to have conditioner in their hair, or
yes,
to,
so I have everyone
to launder their rinse twice, or?
Yep. So what we do is we wash all of the clothes in vinegar before they hop in, and we have them wash out all of the conditioner and not apply sunscreen or body lotions. And we discovered this earlier on, as the more people we had in the pool doing an underwater session, with all the moving back and forth, rubbing the sides of the wall, all of the clothes that came in, all of the conditioner in the hair, that the pool water would stay clear for about 15 minutes. And after about 20 to 30 minutes, we wouldn't have any more usable images.
Wow.
Yeah. So for me, now that I have my own portrait studio in the backyard, I have a lot less worry than when I was using a public pool. So I don't have nearly as many clarity issues because I'm really hyper aware of keeping that pool clear. So if you are running into clarity issues, think about the conditioner in the hair. Think about rinsing all of the clothes. Usually we use too much soap in our laundry, rinsing them in vinegar once or twice before bringing them into the water environment.
Does that mean that you put them in the washing machine and add vinegar?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you do it to the bleach cycle. So you don't use soap, and then you use vinegar in the bleach cycle, and that strips out all the soap. So
it's like a cup of vinegar or something.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. So it works out really, really well at getting all of the residue out. And when you're shooting those big, giant, heavy dresses, it makes
a lot of soap.
It's a lot of soap. It makes a lot of difference. So yeah. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. I'm glad we're bringing up all these things. So yeah. And so when the other thing, because you can either do underwater makeup, and it has to be, the makeup has to have be totally great for underwater, which is usually the oil-based makeups. So you're looking at buying a mascara that's truly, truly underwater and waterproof, and then an eyeliner that's really waterproof. And then you're looking at lip stains that really hold. A lot of makeup artists will really know what products are truly great underwater. So a lot of the people who are in the industry, like hairstylists and makeup artists, they'll come to the pool all the way done up with their makeup. But for my family sessions, a lot of the ladies who are absolutely beautiful are coming much more relaxed. They're coming with their faces scrubbed, and because of they're lovely ladies. But then because of the way that the water filters, and how blue-based it is, I'm seeing a lot more of when I'm pulling those colors back, I'm seeing more of their little underlying skin, I wouldn't say imperfections, but the character of their skin that wouldn't show up above water because we're shooting much warmer tone, will actually kind of show up more on my sensor. So it's not the ladies, they're absolutely lovely, but it's the steps in editing to bring that out, sometimes create skin that has more the little red micro things that are underneath that you wouldn't see in person will show up on my screen when I'm editing. So
well, besides that, your camera actually records infrared light, which our eyes do not see. And that is especially apparent when their skin, the underneath of their skin is warmer and emitting light, and that becomes more apparent underwater.
It becomes incredibly apparent underwater, and much more so just because of the different things we're dealing with color. So I actually end up doing as much editing as I possibly can in Photoshop and Lightroom, and then I actually pull the images into Perfectly Clear to work on the skin tones. So let's zoom in on this, and I will show you. And she's a lovely lady, so don't think that she's not, because she's gorgeous. And you can see that you can see little tiny bits. I mean,
Right.
just tiny, tiny bits of little freckles and dots and stuff that would not show up if we were shooting above water. Like, they just aren't there. And so I use Perfectly Clear to smooth those out to make her look like she would had we done a portrait session above water.
Yeah.
And I also always add lips back in again, because my processing also, the colors don't, the above water colors don't come quite, those reds aren't there. So, you know, there's a little bit of detail that goes into the skin, editing that skin. Oops. Cancel that, sorry about that. All right, so yeah, so what I want to show you is up here, and this is what the Perfectly Clear software does, is it will take all those little minute micro blemishes that are just tiny, and it will remove those without making the skin look fake or crunchy or overly processed, because when you look at the image as a whole, she just looks lovely.
Right, that's great.
So, yeah, so I think what I'll do is I'll go in and kind of show you some of the settings. Now, it is each picture, especially underwater, you have to figure out how you want to process it, how you want to go as you go. So it's not always, it's not just
a formula.
No, there's not a formula. Yeah. And every image is different. So you have to just play with each of the settings. And since I use this image, I use this software when I'm doing these underwater portrait stuff, it's like you probably above water would do very different settings than I would do. So, so just give this as an example of what kinds of things you can do. Now, I choose to do this stuff through a plug-in through Photoshop instead of going through Lightroom, because I do like to layer and I do like to mask it specifically to areas of my image. And it makes it so that I have a little bit more control, because I can also just lower, if I want to later, I can lower the opacity, or I could change the mask. So it makes the software even more flexible than using it as a standalone.
In fact, and you're not doing this in this one, but if you create a smart object out of that layer and launch Perfectly Clear, you can actually go back in and readjust the settings.
Awesome. Yes,
so
and I have
start over fresh. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yes. So let's just go into, let's load Perfectly Clear.
It's under the filter menu. Cool.
I got it right here. And I might not have the most up-to-date version, but I have the one that works for me.
That's right. Yeah.
Uh-oh, let's see if this will work. Here we go. Oh no. Uh-oh, I don't have it set up on this computer. Oh my goodness. Oh no, I should have checked that before. Well, I did use it on this photo.
Will it let you run in trial mode?
Let's see. Let's try again. I apologize, everybody. This is embarrassing.
That's all right. These things happen. Oh yeah, we've already gone for.
Yeah. All right. So I apologize, but I did absolutely use it on this image. I was actually using it earlier today. I was loaded on the software, so I don't know what happened there. But you can see that it does make a dramatic difference in.
Yeah, it identifies the blemishes in the skin and reduces their contrast and impact.
But yet,
so you masked.
I did. Now let me show. Yeah, let me show you what I did with that. And I kept the bubbles. So the bubbles.
Ah, I see. So Perfectly Clear was removing the bubbles.
And I wanted to keep some of those bubbles. Not all of the bubbles, but like especially this bubble right here, I absolutely 100% wanted to keep. So the white parts of the images are the parts of the images that that Perfectly Clear is using, whereas the red parts are the parts that I had masked away. Gotcha.
So that's whereas if I used it from Lightroom, I would just, it applies to the whole image and I'm stuck with it.
Yeah. Select. There we go. Yep. So I'm really happy to have done that. So that's the way I was able to keep the little bubbles, but I was able to still have the overall image look lovely and much more flattering for a portrait for underwater.
Excellent. Will you show us in Lightroom how you adjust for color?
Oh, yeah. So let's go over there and we can do that.
Like on any one of your awesome.
Yeah, let's go find one.
Yeah.
Let's go find a good one. Let's just grab.
And don't forget, guys, if you weigh in with a question or a comment, that'll enter you in the drawing for Perfectly Clear, which will, and yeah, I'll send you a full license for Perfectly Clear.
Okay, so let's go to folder in library. Alrighty, so let's grab one of these. As you can see, I go through quite a few edits.
Yes, I do the same
right.
thing using different tools.
All right, so let's go here. Develop. And we are going to create a virtual copy.
Good idea. Always a good idea.
Yep, I have lots of virtual copies. Yep. And yeah, this is another one that I, just before we jump back, this is another one that I use the Perfectly Clear software on.
Oh, excellent.
To just bring out a little bit, just soften that cheek. So as you can see here, here's a good example. And I love this woman to pieces. Her skin was phenomenal above water. So really, this is not anything bad. Okay, so as you can see, that's what it looked like before Perfectly Clear, and that's what it looked like after.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
So yeah, you can really see the difference that Perfectly Clear makes. So here we go.
And it does it en masse. It does all the blemishes at once. We don't have to go in with a brush tool and touch up each one individually, and that's just such a time saver, so that you can spend more time being creative. Yep,
exactly. And see, there are those blemishes right there. And her skin was great above water. Okay, and then once we go over, there we go. And you can see what a difference that made.
Yeah, thank you. I love that.
Yeah, and she still has the texture in her cheeks. She still has everything else. So there's still a lot of dimension in the skin. So, all right, so let's go back to what we look like when we start. So when we're starting, this one is let's reset the entire image.
I was going to say, I don't think your camera white balance goes up that high. So.
Yeah. So this was shot with my Sony. So this was using an underwater case for my Sony camera. I rotate between the two because the Sony can rapid fire. So especially when I was looking at having them chew watermelon underwater, being able to shoot at a much higher frame rate and being able to grab focus with the mirrorless and being able to see kind of what's going on at a quicker pace than I would with the Canon made a huge difference. So,
and are you using live view when you shoot with the Canon, or are you looking through the viewfinder?
I am looking through the viewfinder, and sometimes I'm using live view, but it's almost a guess. Everything, when you're using that underwater bag, everything is blurry and foggy, and it's hard to see. So I'm basically, if I'm thinking like I have vision that's like 2200 instead of 2020 when I'm using it, because the water, my goggles, the layer of plastic, and then looking through that viewfinder, I'm basically looking for blobs. And so often I will make sure that the image is lined up and I'm looking over the camera, talking to the client. So as long as I have them in the view, I'm actually using my eyes to see what's going on instead of using the viewfinder at all. With the Sony, because it has just inherently, one of the factors of mirrorless is that I'm able to use live view at a much more faster pace and it's more responsive. I can use the back of my camera more as a guide. However, for the most part, I almost shoot blindly. It's almost just aim, shoot, go, and I'm looking above at them and their interactions, trying to make sure that I capture that exact moment.
Excellent. Okay.
So yeah, so this was as shot, and this is really a nice clear photo. It's shot at, you can see, ISO 1/350th of a second, so I'm able to capture those bubbles super crisp as they float up from their mouths. I'm at f6.7, so the bubbles behind her head and in front and her fingertips are all in focus. So that depth of field at this range helps. And yes, my ISO is high at ISO 2000, but my camera can handle it. The little A6000 you can get for like $600 to $800 depending on where you get it, and it comes with a kit lens that's quite good. And as you can see, I'm using the kit lens at 16 millimeters here.
And then since it's such a small body and because they push them so hard, the housings are much less expensive.
Yeah, the firm housing for that was $280.
Wow,
so,
that's great.
Yeah, so I could get a sub $1,000 kit that worked excellent underwater. Now, the reason I sometimes use the Canon versus the Sony is because my Sony is a crop sensor, and It does so many things so amazing for underwater, but I'm able to get a little bit better skin tone with a lot less work off of the Canon, even though it struggles in other areas. So
Right on.
it's kind of like I actually bring both into the pool quite often, and I'll shoot some images with one and some with the other, just so that I can have the features of each depending on what image I'm shooting. So the very first thing I do is I adjust the white balance as best I can. And I really am sliding the slider all the way over. And because these kids are close to my sensor, because I'm shooting at 16mm, and you see, both, they're pretty close up. I don't have to worry so much about the blues here as I would if they were further back and I was doing a full body shot. If I was, sometimes I will take the color all the way up, the temperature all the way up. I'll do as much edits as I can, and then I'll bring it back and I'll re-slide that slider even further and make further adjustments.
Wow.
But thankfully for this image, I don't quite have to do that.
So the more water between you and your subject, the bluer the scene will be as well.
Correct, exactly. And
which we can see in the background there. It's much more blue. Okay.
In the back, and it's almost white gray in the front, because my pool actually has gray concrete. And so the blue is just the color of the water. Yeah. So so I get that going as much as I can. And then I kind of sometimes will play a little bit in this little basic panel here with the exposure and contrasts and all that stuff. But I actually skip down. My next step is I always do a tiny S-curve adjustment. I like the way that handles contrast better than doing it up here in the basics panel. And it's ever so slight. It's even smaller than what you can do for the presets here, the linear, the medium, and the strong contrast. My S-curve is smaller than those. So I always play around with that slightly. And then here's where underwater photography this is where I spend most of my time, is in the color panel. Now, there's so many different things you can do here beyond just saturation. I don't ever up the saturation in the basics panel, because that's upping the saturation, the vibrance on almost all the color channels. Vibrance and saturation work differently, but I still don't mess with them much. I come down here where I can individually tune what I'm looking for. So I can bring up the orange saturation. I can bring down the green saturation. I can just really play with those. And luminance makes a huge difference in underwater photography when you're looking at skin tones. So I will mess around. If you can see, look, when you bring the orange down, I mean, a huge difference. So you have to really mess and pull these sliders. You can up the orange luminance in your underwater photo if it seems underexposed, and even it seems like the exposure for the entire image goes up almost, because because the subject and the part that you're working on is so much oranger compared to everything else in the image when you're shooting underwater, that alone can make a huge difference in your exposure. So that's why I mess with these before I even touch any of the things in the basic panel. So, so you can vary all of those. So, so then I come down and I'll do the noise reduction now while I'm in here. I don't ever do the sharpening until I'm ready to export the image. So that's how I start processing my underwater photos. So we're going from something like this. Let me control copy. And I could do the preview, but it's all right. I'll just do it this way.
Right. No,
and then from that to that was just a few seconds. So if you're shooting underwater, please, I beg of you, play around with the sliders, and especially in the color panel. And I think that the quality of your underwater images will go up dramatically.
Yeah, that looks great. And that's a really fast, simple adjustment to make.
So yeah. Is there any other questions that anybody has?
Excellent. No, I guess we're still just tickled to see all the work coming through here. So
yeah, it's fun. It's something that I really truly enjoy doing, and I enjoy sharing with you. And I hope that next week when you go shoot at the beach or at the at the ocean, that you also can start to create some really fun stuff.
Yes, my mind is swimming with ideas of what we'll be doing. I'm thinking, because there's actually a Goodwill store just a couple miles from our beach house that we're renting, so we may just go pick up some new threads for
fun
flowing underwater with.
It'll be really fun. I mean, and even if you're doing natural stuff, just really watch what time you go to the beach to watch for clarity. So figure out, what works best and just have fun.
Is high tide better than low tide?
It really depends on the beach.
Yeah.
So, it's like, and it just depends on, there's so many factors that, and if you're like for this image, like we talked about before, because the only way I was able to get it was instead of, every advice I gave you, shoot backlit, shoot backlit, shoot backlit, but this I shot frontlit. So because the clarity wasn't as good, you're getting a lot more definition shooting from the front. So you'll figure it out. It's just, it's trial and error.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much. I'm very excited. I am very excited. Well, Erika, we're glad that you joined us, and we are. How long have you been doing this underwater stuff?
About 5 years. So 5 or 6 years now. And at first I sucked, just like everybody else does, like when they start something. But I think that each time I shot, I figured out something that I could do better. And so the next time I was in the pool, I stepped it up a notch and learned, oh, if I do this, this happens. If I do this, this happens. Oh, I want to avoid that, so what if we try this? So it's a lot of trial and error, but I hope that I gave you and everybody else a jump start so that you don't quite, or if you see that problem, that you're able to say, oh, Erika said this, let me try this next time. And so you don't feel alone, and you don't feel, and you don't have to start from the absolute bottom.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Where can we see more of your work?
Well, I am the only Erika Thornes in the world, so it makes it kind of, it's good and bad. So you can go to my website, erikathornes.com. I'm also active on Facebook, much more so my personal page. So if you can either follow me, and I will always post my pictures on the public there, or you can also, sometimes I'm on Google+, and I'm on the Photofocus website, as well as lynda.com. So there's lots of ways to reach out and contact me, and I'm always willing and able to lead. If I don't know the answer, I will find someone who does and send you on your way. So yeah, so I hope that this was inspiring, and I really hope that send me underwater photos. If you shoot underwater, I love to see them. I absolutely love to see them. I'm not too busy. I get excited to have people write to me and say, I did this. And I'm like, yes, way to go. It makes all of this time that we spend together, Levi, worthwhile when I get feedback. So
I feel the same way. I feel the same way. Well, thank you so much. And I've drawn for our drawing, and it looks like Todd Sampson has won the full version of Perfectly Clear Complete. Todd, if you'll send me an email at levi@photofocus.com, Levi @PHOTOFOCUS. I'll send you a license code for Perfectly Clear Complete. And Mark Rodriguez has won the Perfect Eyes. I'm laughing because I know Mark, and I'm excited to see what kind of pictures he's turning out next. So thank you guys very much for joining us. Send me an email, and I will send you your winnings. And Erika, thank you so much for joining us on Photofocus's webinar this month.
It was totally fun.
Yeah, I'm excited and invigorated to go out and try this. And don't forget, this is rewatchable, so you can share this video with your friends and come back to it for reference another time as well, which I will certainly be doing when I get my pictures back in from the beach next week, so that I can start finishing them like a pro. So thank you for joining us, and thank you all for joining us. And we'll catch you next time on the Photofocus Hangout.